All right. I think we're ready. That might be stretching it. We'll give everybody a few minutes to get in. We still got some coming. All right, good morning. Good to see everybody. Thanks for being here. We started this last week, and so we're going to finish it this week. It's just we're kind of walking through our recent trip to Jordan, Israel, and then to Greece. We had, I think I had 90 some slides. This is number 47, so we should get through it today, all right? And so I've affectionately named this class as Uncle Jeff's vacation video, but I think there's going to be some neat things we're going to see. For those of you who are, I just need to say this, for those who have seen this online or are joining online this morning, we had a little bit of a technical issue last week, and so we have all the pictures that go along with this, but the pictures didn't make it on the stream. So all you got was me pointing at the screen, and it's really awkward. Okay, so we're going to redo that so that you can actually see the pictures that go along with it. We ended last week. We were still in Jerusalem. We were about ready to leave, and we talked about some of the sites that we had seen. We're going to finish there. In and around there this morning and move on to the Sea of Galilee and to Capernaum, and then hopefully make our way all the way to Greece. It was about 18, 19 days that we were there. It's very impressive. A lot of good things to see, and I mentioned this last week. It's a bit like drinking from a fire hose for those 3 weeks. I mean, it's just information being thrown at you, places that to see. It's a lot to digest, okay? So we're making our way through this. Still in Jerusalem, I just want to start with this one this morning. We ended last week around the Garden of Gethsemane. This is a picture of Herod's palace, where Jesus would have been taken in Luke's narrative. He goes to Pilate, then he goes to Herod, and then back. We're still in Jerusalem. This is the home of Caiaphas. This is the high priest's house. It's real. There's a lot of things around that. Of course, we remember it. We remember it very well as where Jesus is on trial, but also where Peter denies Jesus. There's a statue out of Peter sitting by the fire saying, "I don't know him." Incredibly interesting things. We made our way towards the house, and this picture on the right, these are steps that are original to the time when Jesus was there, probably the ones he came up. As you look across, and I think the next picture is not, but you can look across and see the garden, see the Mount of Olives, where he would have come across down the Kidron Valley and then been brought up to Caiaphas' house. This is something that I learned, and I guess it had never hit me before. We read the narratives of Jesus being arrested and being brought to Caiaphas, and he's tried before that group, and then it's the next day that he's taken to Pilate. And so I guess I'd never given any thought to what happens between the night that he is arrested and the next day when he's taken to Pilate. There is a pit in this house where prisoners were kept. and it would have been where he would have been kept overnight. This is a view from the top looking down, and this is a view from the bottom looking up. And they've got it now where you can walk down in there. And so Jesus would have been questioned by the high priest, and then when he was going to be held over the next day, he would have been lowered down into this pit with ropes, and then the ropes pulled back up, and then lowered those back down the next day to pull him back out. There you go. So it was a really, really neat experience. We read one of the Psalms while we were in there about you rescuing my soul from the pit. I mean, it was really, really amazing to be there. This is a picture across from that. You can see the dome, kind of upper left, not the gold one. The other one is the Church of the Ascension. So that's the Mount of Olives right there. Right in front of that is the garden just behind that wall. So you can kind of imagine the scene that night of him walking with the soldiers back up to the home of Caiaphas. We went to the Israeli Museum, and in the Israeli Museum, and I've got tons of pictures of this, but I only have about 3, I think, up here for this, is a model of the city at the time of Jesus, and it is fascinating to see. You can kind of tell the size of it. I think we can tell a bit of the size of it just by looking across at the people on the other side. Very, very well done. A lot of interesting things that to see in that. That towards the center top looks kind of like a palace. That is Pilate's headquarters. And it would have been on those steps, where he would have pronounced Jesus guilty. Another picture, just a bit of a different angle from that. This rock in the center, and this pointer doesn't work very well, but that rock in the very center of that just kind of center looks like a big dirt spot in the middle. That is that's the place of crucifixion. It's next to the road, and very, very close to right out that gate where Pilate's headquarters are. He would have been led out crucified there. We were able to go while we were at the Israeli Museum. We couldn't take pictures in this particular spot, but we were able to see the scroll of Isaiah that's found in Qumran at the Dead Sea. It's giant. There's just a big round display lit up, and you can walk around that, and then if you could read Hebrew, you could tell what it says. I can't. It was really funny looking, but it was really interesting to see that there. We made our way the next day. We left Jerusalem and we went to Nazareth. This is a picture of the church there. Our group, there were like 48 of us, something like that. Is that right, Dallas? And then there was another group there that was led by Everett Hufford and a bunch of Freed-Hardeman students there. And we filled that building up that day. It was really, really neat to worship with these folks. The guide for the Freed-Hardeman bunch was the son of the preacher here at the church in Nazareth. Joe Bright from Brookline, he preached at Sunset for a long time, but at Brookline preached that morning with an interpreter. It was really, really good. We enjoyed we had a nice meal with them after it was over. We had people sitting in all kinds of places because they're not used to that many folks at once. Really, really good time. We went from the church, this is a site from what they call the Mount Precipice. And so if you remember the story from, I think it's Luke 4, Jesus going back to his hometown, preaching in the synagogue, upsetting the people there, and they were going to bring him out and stone him. And this, at least, is a possible site for that. And so stoning really involves being thrown off of something and then finished off with stones. And this is where they brought him to throw him out off the cliff at the edge of the city. We went from there. The same day we made our way to Magdala, just the home of Mary Magdalene. And this is the ruins of a synagogue there in Magdala. It's really, really neat to walk around. You see some of the old structures, some of the old city there. There's a church there. This is in that church. there's a church there. This is quite a famous painting of the woman who touches Jesus' garment to be healed. That's all on one wall that they've done. All right, there's a couple of people we didn't know. Found out by the Sea of Galilee. We made a trip from there. We went up to Dan, we're the tribe of Dan. Really interesting things there. Dan has got several things about scripture-wise. This is looks like they're going to do a rebuild, or at least an image for you to look at for the altar at Dan. Dan is where one of the golden calves were set up under the time of Jeroboam. And we were able to walk around there to look at some of those ruins of the city. Again, I've got some other pictures, but we made our way down to this place. And this is called Abraham's Gate. They've built a structure over it to kind of help preserve it some, and they've unearthed this. And if you go back to Genesis, where Lot and his family are captured by the kings, the Battle of the Five Kings. It talks about Abraham coming and going as far as Dan. And this they believe to be at least one that's like it anyway, but from around that time, of a gate into the city where Abraham would have walked through. It's really interesting to see. We went from there to Caesarea Philippi. Caesarea Philippi is the place where Jesus asked his disciples that question. Who do people say that I am? Right, and they have all the answers. They get back. Okay, so who do you say that I am? It's here where Peter says, you are the Christ, right? The Son of the living God. Caesarea Philippi is that cave there is referred to as the gates of Hades. And you wonder if Jesus has this in mind as he says that on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of Hades will not prevail against it. Right? The gates of hell will not prevail against it. This little section, we walked all over this section. It's pretty good size. It's just one pagan place of worship after another. The god Pan is worshipped there, and there's a sanctuary, the ruins of a sanctuary to Pan, and you have all of these little carvings in the side there. Those were places for idols to be. And it seems like quite an interesting place for Jesus to go, okay, who am I? As compared to all of this stuff that's going on around you. Okay? That's another spot, another shot of it, a bit more of a distance. And we made our way back towards Tiberias is where we stayed, around the sea. This is the church of the multiplication. I mentioned this last week. There's a church built on everything. And really for good reason. The sites that are incredibly important to us as people who follow Jesus are not necessarily important to the Jews or Muslims who live there. And so, I don't mean to bore you with this, but when Constantine becomes emperor of Rome, his mother is a Christian, and she makes her way here, makes her way to the places around in Jerusalem and then around the Sea of Galilee, and asks people, where did these things take place, meets with other people there, finds where these things take place, and builds on top of them so they can't be disturbed, right? And so this is the church of the multiplication. This is where, again, where they believe the feeding of the 5,000 takes place around this. And again, I say it's built on everything. There's a rock, right, coming through the floor. They built the church around it. That this is where this happened, or at least somewhere around this is where this happened. And so you can see the mosaics done on the floor. 2 fish, basket of bread in the middle. This is to commemorate that. The Sea of Galilee. When you stop and you think about all of the things that happen around it in the life of Jesus, there's tons. The first disciples are from Capernaum on the Sea of Galilee. which we'll see that in a minute. The walking on water, the calming of the storm, the healing of the demonic in Gadara. It's the cross. The Mount of Beatitudes, which is really close. It's just an amazing place to be. There are those times. Again, you go from one site to another, and it's easy to kind of, all right, get off the bus, get back on the bus. Let's find our spot. Let's get to the next one. But there's those moments where you go, okay, there's something here, right? We mentioned it last week. While it's probably not the site, but the garden tomb that they have, but a place where you can kind of sit and think about what's going on. Actually, the Garden of Gethsemane, where you go, this is still here, and this was here. The Mount of Olives, looking over the city, those kinds of things. The steps, where you can go, this is where he would have walked. I mean, just those kinds of things. But the sea was one of those places. We were able to take a boat out and to look around and just to sit for a while. We sat and we read the scriptures of some things that have gone on there, and it was really, really an amazing thing. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing, beautiful place. You look, that gray, those are coverings. That's actually, I think that's banana trees under it that they've got covered. But just on the other side of that mount up there, that's the Mount of Beatitudes, and there's a church built there, right, where it's believed that the Sermon on the Mount took place, and we got to go there. That was an amazing thing too. This is remnants of a boat that they found. The boat dates back to about that time, around the time of Jesus. They found it. It was sunk and covered in mud. And so they were up to the challenge of how is it that they're going to get this, or what are they going to do with it. And they dug around this thing, and then they encased it with foam, and then carried it in, and then peeled the foam off, and then they've got braces. So that's on display. That's it, like the typical fishing boat from around that time. Right, again, these are all really, really close together. The little sign says, "This is holy ground." That rock that's on the outside is also on the inside. The church is built right on top of it. And this is the church of, there's a name for it. I think they kept calling it the site of the primacy of Peter. But this is where Jesus fed the disciples in John 21, and the restoration of Peter. And they call it the primacy of Peter. We wouldn't go that far, right? When we think about the doctrine of, particularly the Catholic doctrine of succession of popes and being in the line of Peter, that they go to this and say this is where Jesus gives Peter more authority than the others. Right? I don't know that I buy. I don't know that I go along with that, but I can certainly see their point. It's here where Jesus asked Peter 3 times, "Do you love me?" Right? Obviously corresponding with the denials. But in each one of those of tend my lambs, feed my sheep, feed my sheep, right? And so, but this is that spot. I don't know if I have a picture of the inside. I do not. The picture of the inside, again, that rock comes in, and there's that sign. It's the table of Christ is what that means. And it's really, really neat. We made it from there to Capernaum. In Capernaum, there's all kinds of things, right? A lot of things happen in Capernaum as well. We got to see the ruins of the synagogue in Capernaum, where Jesus taught. There's a lot of this is reconstruction above. On the outside, there's a row of stones that are really dark, and those are apparently the original, and then they built on top and started to do some restoration of this. But the other interesting thing that we found or saw there was, and this is underneath, there's actually something built on top of it, but underneath this structure, this is at least supposed to be Peter's house in Capernaum. and to get to look into that. And you get to see the way the city was set up, other monuments that are done and placed there. It's really, really, really neat. From there we did go to the Mount of the Beatitudes. I'm probably not alone in this, but the Sermon on the Mount I hold in very high regard. It is, I think, kind of the constitution of the kingdom of God, right? This is what it looks like to follow Jesus. This is what he wants from his followers. And to be in a place, and again, is this the exact place? I don't know. But to be in the place where he would have delivered this, quite possibly, is an amazing thing to experience. I'll just say that. It just, to think about him being there, the crowds that are there, and to hear those words. And we read part of that while we were sitting on that mountain, and it was just it's just an amazing thing to see. There's the church that's built there on that mountain. There's a lot of the pictures of Jesus with the Sermon on the Mount, and then this is just a shot from that overlooking the Sea of Galilee. Just really, it's one of those places where we did have a little bit of time, not a lot, but we had a little bit of time to kind of walk around, to kind of reflect and to think, right? And those are the good spots, right? When we had that kind of time. Okay. From there we went. This is just a shot from Mount Carmel. And Mount Carmel probably rings a bell with us, right? Elijah and the prophets in 1 Kings. There's a big monument to Elijah there, but it's really, really interesting to stand where you think, okay, they stood here, right? Went from there. We went to Caesarea Maritime, right, on the Mediterranean, and it is beautiful. It's beautiful. These are the old Roman aqueducts that are still there. There's another couple we ran into. Don't really took their picture. I don't know how that got in here, right? But to take a look at the ruins there, and to remember, again, things that have happened there. Paul being imprisoned there. This is where he went after being arrested in Jerusalem, sent to Caesarea, and stayed there for a couple of years. There's ruins of the palace and of the bath. Our guide was telling us that where you see the grass here, that used to be water. It used to come up, that they built a wall and kept that out. That used to be water. And at least the prevailing thought is that these steps, it would have been the last steps that Paul took at Caesarea before getting on the boat to go to Rome. And again, it's just those moments of going, they were here. Right? This is a real thing. These things really happen. Life was rough. I'll say that, right? We made it to Athens. I got to tell them the story, the plain story. We went from Istanbul was the hub of everything. So we flew out of Dallas to Istanbul to Jordan. When we left Israel to go to Greece, we flew back to Istanbul and then to Athens. We are at the airport in Israel. That's where, in Tel Aviv. And we all come in, we've all got our stuff. You got to go through. They were telling us all, the immigration people are going to ask you questions. Just answer them as short as you can and get out. Right? They were particularly interested in my family for some reason. I don't know why. They want to know who my parents were and if I had siblings. I don't know why, but they did. But we make it through there. We get to the ticket counter. We have our itineraries, and we just get our seat assignments when we get there. And so we had asked them. Stacy had booked late, and so we had asked, "Is there a way that?" She said, "Is there a way that we can sit together on this flight?" And the guy looked at her and he said, I won't do his accent, that's probably offensive, but said, I'm going to be very straight with you. You don't have a seat on this plane, to her. So I actually called our leader. He had already gone through, called him, and he said something about the itinerary. And so she got the itinerary out and she was showing it to him. He goes, we have the flight. We don't have a seat for you, right? And that was the thing. And so we began to panic. He said, he goes, let me talk to my supervisor, who happened to be like 2 desks down that we didn't know. But she worked it out. We got a seat. He goes, no, it's not together. We go, we don't really care. You know, we would like to at least leave the country. How about that? So we were able to do that. We made our way to Athens. Stayed in the hotel there in Athens. You can see the Parthenon behind us. It's really, really pretty at night. From Athens, we went and we got on a boat on the Aegean. This is just, I wanted to throw this in. This really nothing biblically significant, just the sunset at Mykonos. I just thought it was pretty. But so we went, that was our first stop was Mykonos, and then we made our way to Turkey and went to Ephesus, which was very, very neat. You see the ruins of the old city. It sits in a valley, and they have uncovered, I hope I have the picture of it on here, I cannot remember, but a picture of how much they have dug down to get to these ruins. That giant monument in the middle is a monument to the Emperor Domitian. He wanted it big enough so that you could see his image from the harbor, and it's quite a ways from there that you could see his image when you pulled into port. A monument to Nike, the goddess of victory, is there, and so there's all kinds of these. Hadrian's, there's a temple to Hadrian there. All kinds of various images. So you kind of get a feel for who the people in Ephesus are, the things that they worshipped, all that kind of stuff. Nice shot of this is the marketplace, the agora where Paul would have been. There's an old library. The library, I don't think was original to Paul, but there's a building next to it. The ruins are there. They believe that was the original Hall of Tyrannus where Paul taught for a couple of years while he was there. More of the shots of the marketplace, and you can barely make out the theater. Right there was a better picture of it coming. And this is, we didn't get to go up here, that little white sign. That little white sign is there's a cave there. And that is reportedly the home of Paul while he stayed in Ephesus, that he lived here. And it's just up the hill from the city. The theater, you get a better shot of it from as you're leaving. And all right. And then from there we went, I don't have a lot of pictures of the things on Patmos, but this is Patmos, where John was exiled. I have a few pictures, not many, because of the sites that are there. You're not allowed to take pictures of some of them. There's 2 major sites that we went to. One's a monastery, and it's up on top of the mountain. We had a wonderful guide, by the way. Every day on this ship, whenever you got ready to go out on these various excursions, there was about 1,500 people or so, something like that, and they all met in this big lounge area, and then they would call out the various groups to leave. And we were never the first, right? We were always down the list somewhere. And so you'd go out and you get on the tender boats and they take you into the island and get off and go. And he said, he goes, don't worry about that. I've got this. I know how to handle this. And so the first place that we went on there was the monastery, because everybody else stopped at the cave first. And so we went to the monastery first. And we were able to go in there and walk around a little bit, still an active monastery. You'll see in some of the old mosaics and old artwork that's there. You could not take any pictures inside the building once you got inside. But it's the monastery of St. John. whenever we were leaving, and there's quite a little hike to get back down to the bus, the line of people that had been on the ship that were coming to the monastery was backed way back down the hill. So we had gone up there first, and then we got to the cave next. We didn't have near the crowd to fight. The significance of the cave, and I could not get a picture. This is actually Crete. I don't have a picture of the cave, and you couldn't take one while you were inside. The significance of the cave is this is where they believe John received the revelation of Jesus. This is where he wrote it. There's a spot in there that has been carved out. That at least the continuing history is that it was carved out, and this is where John slept, was in this cave, and in the place where this was actually written. It's an amazing experience to think about being there. And again, we all have our favorite spots, and you all know mine, so I'll just keep talking about them. Right? So you have the Sermon on the Mount, right? John is one of my favorite gospel. It is, and the Book of Revelation is another one of those that's incredibly important, I think. And to be in a spot where this was written down is really, really amazing. I'll back that up. This is on Crete. Made our way to Crete. There was an old castle there we toured, but when we came back into town, this is the Church of St. Titus. It's an Orthodox church, and you can see the inside of it. It's beautiful. It really is. They had a service there that morning, and they had gone by the time that we made our way down there. You see the icons in the back. This is Eastern Orthodox. They have the icons on the stage. The altar sits behind those two doors in the middle. Very, very beautiful. There's a little chapel. This is as you walk into the church, you see this kind of a shrine to Titus. And then there's a chapel just off to the left, what they call a chapel. It's just off the foyer part. And that's a little hard to make out. I wish it was bigger. But that golden dome thing under that glass on that second picture, the sign says that this holds the holy skull of Titus. That they found Titus's skull, and this is where it resides. There's always things that we can learn from other folks, and when you see things, you go, okay, that just looks weird, right? But I think there's good intention behind it. While we were in there, and it was a little bit odd to be in this chapel and thinking about taking pictures as people are coming in and out. But it's a strange thing to witness, is that people would come in. There was a couple while we were in there. Would come in, they would make their way up to this particular one, and then there are icons all around the room, just the little icon. They would come in, they would make the sign of the cross, they would kiss the icons as they made their way back out. Now we go, that's just weird, right? Or is that just me? We go, that seems strange to us. But there's at least a level of devotion there that I think we can learn from. I've told this story before. It's not here, but we're in Guatemala at Esquipulas. There's a big basilica there. It's beautiful, and you make your way in, and you get to see all of the ornate things that are there. There's a carving out of ebony wood of Jesus. It's known as the Black Jesus, and that's what they call it there. But people come in and they look at this, and then when you watch them leave, they back out of the room all the way. Now we go, that seems odd. But to them, it's, I'm not going to turn my back on Jesus, right? There's a level of devotion there. We may seem weird to us, but a level of devotion that we can go, maybe there's something we can pick up, all right? So anyway, that's Crete. Then we went to Corinth. This is the canal that's been cut through at Corinth. I got pictures of both ends. It's started under Nero and then stopped. But when Nero went to cut this canal through, he brought a lot of Jewish slaves to do this. Well, the project was abandoned, but the Jewish slaves stayed here. And so they grew and population grew. World War II comes, and the Nazis take control of this area. And as they are about to lose control of this area, there are, I believe, 15,000, is that the right number? There are about 15,000 Jews that they load on to boxcars and drive off into that canal to kill them instead of leaving them behind. The canal was cut because this was the way that ships crossed that before. There's the road, and you can see the tracks down the side where there would be wheels, and they would load these boats up on those carts and push it from one side of Corinth to the other, right? From one sea to the other. We got to go see the ancient city. It's very impressive. I mean, there's a lot there to see. That's the remains of the Temple of Apollos. As big as this area was, and it's hard to get a picture of how big the area is, that our guide told us there that they have excavated only about 5% of that city. There's still much, much more underneath. And somebody asked, they said, well, why don't we uncover the rest of it? And she said, well, look around, people live here. There are houses and things built on there now, so they'd have to work out how they're going to get those people moved and how we would dig everything back out. The Temple of Apollos is there. This is a picture of the Bema, the judgment seat where Paul would have appeared before whenever there was the uproar in Corinth. Everybody remembers that from the book of Acts, when they won't do anything about it, and they take Sosthenes and they beat him, right? Or no, Gaius. They take Gaius and beat him, the ruler of the synagogue. This is a view kind of what that looks like, of where the judges would have sat up on top of that seat. And this decorative little stone out there in the middle, this is where they scourged people. It's about this tall. And there are, it's hard to see, but there are holes in the side where they would anchor them. They would be down on their knees, anchored to this, and be beaten here in front of the judgment seat. Again, we're looking at places, and these are spots where they say this is original road. Places where Paul would have been and where he would have walked. We're going to make it. I really apologize for this because you can't hardly make it out. I thought it was going to come out better, and I just could not get it to enlarge. If you could see it really close, this is across from where those ruins have been excavated. It's across the street from it. You got to walk a little bit down, but there is an inscription to Erastus, the city treasurer, and evidence again of people that we meet in Scripture. This street would have been paved in his honor, probably financed. A section of this was financed by him in honor of Erastus. We're going to end the slides here with a picture of Mars Hill when we made it back to Athens. It's right next to the Acropolis. We made our way up to that. It's a great thing to see. It really is. It's beautiful. It's a hike, but it's really neat. But Mars Hill, those steps that you see there just to the left of the trees, those are closed off. Those were not the ones that you used to get up there because this has been worn down so much that it is slick. I mean, it's really hard to get around. And I think probably the thing that in Athens in general, but here, it just seemed really, really strange to me, is graffiti. There's graffiti everywhere in Athens. I mean, it's all over buildings, everywhere you go. There's something. Some of it's really, really neat, really very well done. But there's a lot. You make your way up on the top of Mars Hill where the Areopagus would have met, where Paul would have defended himself, and there's graffiti there. But there's people all over it too. I mean, it's just unbelievably the number of people that were there. And this on the right, look, just in time. This on the right is is Paul's sermon. It's engraved there in Greek, there on the side of that mountain. We're going to end there. It's the last one I've got. A couple of things. I started it this way last week, and I want to reiterate this as a big thank you. Big thank you. Ray brought this trip to our attention quite a while back, or to the attention of the church, and then it was right after that the elders came to me and said, "You need to go, and we're going to send you." And I can't say thank you enough to them and to this congregation. Just the generosity of it, it's amazing. The things that impress us, or impressed me. One was the number of people who were there to see these things. I mentioned this last week. I have never, ever, and I'm not like I'm a world traveler by any means. I mean, I have been to Oklahoma, right? But I've never been in a place where there were parking lots full of tour buses, and that's what we found. The tourist season part seems to be end of March till somewhere in June. After that, it's either too rainy before or too hot after. But it's kind of a short window, and so they are very heavily dependent on that tourism for the economy there. But just the number of people that were there to see this was, I think, it's kind of encouraging. People want to see these places, and so that's one. The other one is there's just those moments. Mount Nebo. To think just for a minute that Moses stood here, and this is what he saw. The cave we talked about, David and Gedi, where David hid. Of seeing that, being in Jerusalem, standing on the original walls of the Jebusite city before David conquered it. And to picture David and his armies making their way up that valley, or to sit in the Garden of Gethsemane. To think about what's gone on there. The Sea of Galilee, all of those things. In a way, made it incredibly real. That it's not just something in some book that we carry around with us. This is actually real. But and it's just one of those faith strengthening things. But we've got, we have the description of most of these things that we've talked about right here in front of us. And I just hope that we pay attention to them and that we remember the things that have gone on for us to be able to sit where we are today. We're here gathered as the people of God because of what God's done 2,000 years ago, but because of the ones that have kept this moving all the way through. There have been those who have been very, very close to us who have shared this with us. And it's in that same, with that same faith, we go, these things happen. This is the lengths to which God will go to be with us. That Christians have faced kind of an uphill cultural battle for a long time when you think of Corinth and you think of Ephesus. Jim wants me to stop. Or the reason that John is exiled at Patmos, or Paul talking to a group in Athens. And I think maybe the takeaway is of going, we're in a different time and we're in a different place, but we're in the same mission, and it's the same call. And our challenge is always is to look at how we live that out moving forward. Let's close with a prayer. Father, we love you. We thank you so much for all that you've done for us. We're reminded of your great love, what you want for us, all the things that you've done to make that possible. We're humbled by the fact that you would want us, but incredibly thankful that you do. We pray that we will look for ways to live out our faith in the places where you've planted us, so that others can know about who you are and all that you've done. We're thankful, Father, for our time together this morning. We love you so much. In Jesus' name, amen.